Please enjoy this ad-free episode as part of our Academic Integrity series sponsored by Pangram Labs, the world's leading AI detection tool. Try it out at pangram.com. That's pangram.com.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to Ed Up on the Ed Up Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the Ed Up Experience, and we are back on another amazing episode of our Academic Integrity series. And with me, as usual, is the co-host who is the most. He is Bradley Emmy. He's co-founder and CTO at Pangram Labs. Bradley, how you doing today?
I'm well, Elvin. We're coming to you from the new Pangram podcast studio.
Oh, nice.
Carved out a corner of the office for it.
Nice, awesome. In Brooklyn, New York, live from Brooklyn, New York. Love it. That's fantastic. Always happy to have you with me, Bradley. So let's get to it. You know how we are. You know how we work. We get into it. So we have a really cool guest today, and she is Dr. Amy Bosley, and she's the president at Northwest Vista College. Amy, how you doing today?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited to have you here. Always appreciate people taking the time. We know you're super busy, so it's very exciting that you're with us, and thank you so much. So we like to jump in and get right to it. So tell us about Northwest Vista College. Talk about what you do and how do you do it.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm so excited to tell you about Northwest Vista College because I'm pretty convinced that it's the best college in the country. Nice. We just competed for the Aspen Prize for Community College Excellence and landed in the top 10.
Nice.
And so we are so proud of our results and our accomplishments. Vista, we call it Vista for short here. So Vista is one of 5 independently accredited colleges in San Antonio, Texas, under the Alamo Colleges umbrella. We are, not surprisingly, in the northwest part of the community, hence the name Northwest Vista. And we are serving this year 20,000 students. Our primary purpose or primary work right now is in transfer. So we provide a number of students transfer opportunities to UTSA primarily, but then also Texas A&M in San Antonio and other institutions around the community. And we are really looking forward to building out a very robust workforce-focused part of our program around emerging technologies, which is a super exciting topic for us. Vista has been around for 30 years. We're celebrating our 30th anniversary. I wish you could be here with me. It's an absolutely beautiful campus. It's kind of up near the beginning of the Texas Hill Country. And so it's just beautiful trees and a lake and just really a gorgeous setting for our students to come and learn. We just launched our first baccalaureate degree, and that's in cloud computing. And we already have over 200 students in 1 year who have enrolled in that program and are pursuing what we know will be a degree that will lead to jobs that will sustain their families and help change our communities. We're really proud of that work. Other things that I think you should know about Vista is that we have an amazing fine and performing arts program on campus, a very robust general education program with faculty who produce all kinds of great events for our students to engage in, and that we are getting ready to grow. So our anticipated growth and anticipated headcount in fall of 2025 will be just over 22,000 students.
Wow. Just a few things before I ask my next question. First of all, shout out to Mike Flores from Alamo Colleges, right, who was on the podcast and made the connection. So shout out to him. 30 years old in higher ed, that's like an infant, it's like so young. That's a little baby.
Yeah.
That's amazing. The growth is like phenomenal. So congratulations, obviously.
Thank you.
And so let me jump into my second question. We're talking about academic integrity. So how do you define academic integrity?
Yeah. So I think it might be important for me to share that I was a tenured faculty member for 10 years, and I started as an adjunct. My first teaching assignment after I was a graduate teaching assistant was in a dual enrollment high school setting. So I actually taught public speaking in a high school where the bells would go off and students would be on field trips, and that was my introduction to teaching. And then I moved over into a full-time teaching position, eventually earning tenure, and I was there in that role for a little over 10 years. So I have experience with and think about this topic from the perspective of a faculty member as well as an administrator. So to me, academic integrity is all about ensuring that the students themselves can demonstrate mastery of the course learning outcomes. that isn't augmented in any specific way, but that what we say you should be able to learn, we need to be able to assess that you individually as a person, absent of supports, can demonstrate mastery of those learning outcomes.
Nice, short and sweet. I think I think that's great. I mean, I think that's kind of like a great definition of like kind of the result, like what we want to see at the end and like kind of what we can aspire to. I guess like kind of what do you see as kind of the ingredients and the path, that faculty and staff and, students and culture can like all kind of come together. Like, what does that look like in terms of the process of getting there?
Sure. So I think, the most important ingredient, in my opinion, is having great faculty who know how to actually assess student learning. And that is so much harder than you might think, right? And I think grades are a proxy for that. And that's what we've allowed to substitute for that. But I was sitting with some faculty yesterday and we were talking about that critical connection of classroom assessment to student completion. There is a direct through line. There's no question that what happens in the classroom and what the faculty are assessing in the classroom is a component of and a direct corollary to the student's ultimate completion, which we also then know is correlated strongly to their performance in the workplace. So if they don't learn, and if we're not assessing correctly, and that we don't have authentic assessments where we actually have evidence that as an expert, I can say, yep, that is what that person knows it, then we don't see that through line all the way through to completion and then post-completion success. So the first ingredient to me is really very well-developed and strong faculty who are clear about how do you know when someone knows something. And faculty who are really skilled in understanding that people demonstrate their knowledge in different ways, and that we have to be flexible as teachers and as people who are assessing student learning. We've got to be flexible about that and offer students many ways and options to demonstrate their knowledge to us, especially as we have more and more neurodivergent learners coming into our classrooms. That's a real concern for us because we believe that anybody can learn what it is that we teach. It's really up to us to figure out how do we assess that and how do we have a degree of confidence about knowing that what we think that they're demonstrating to us is actually their learning, and it's demonstrated to us in a way that we think, they know what they're talking about. So I think it really starts in that classroom experience. I think it starts with the faculty, the development, thinking about what assessment means and how do you know when someone knows. But then I think it goes all the way through the whole college system, right? Because then when somebody does violate our standards of academic integrity, that involves a whole lot of other people and a whole lot of other processes and practices. And so I think bringing our conduct team and our student success team together with our faculty to really approach, and my preference is that we approach academic integrity issues as developmental issues. There are some students who are on this campus ready to cheat their way through. I am not surprised about it. This is the reality. It is not the majority of our students. The majority of students who are coming to community colleges, it's because this is their shot. This is it, right? If they can get this credential or this degree or this certificate, it can change their family forever. And so I think what we have to then think through is when somebody violates our standards of academic integrity, how are they treated in our system? How are we helping them learn about academic integrity, just like we're helping them learn about physics and science and math, right? Academic integrity is something that we hold very dear as practitioners and academicians, but we have to welcome students into that conversation with us. And then, give them a chance and let them see what the impact of that is. I recently saw a great example of this. So it was a faculty member using AI, and we're all fascinated about artificial intelligence and what does that mean? And is that going to change the world for us? And it is. But the assignment that the faculty member gave the student was to use a prompt in ChatGPT or Copilot or one of the tools and ask it to write the paper for you. And then what they did in class was they dissected that to find all of the ways that wasn't effective. And then they rewrote the paper in their own words, right? So it took this idea of, well, yeah, you can cheat, you can take that easy way out, or what might be a really practical way out for you. But here are the ways that you need to become a smart consumer of what that produced for you. And then here are the things that I would expect you to be able to do as the human in the loop, so to speak, to improve upon what artificial intelligence gave you. So just an example of kind of how I think that whole through line needs to happen. And then, I think the last thing I'll say about that is I think right now in our society, employers are the ones determining the values of the credential that we provide, right? So if they're willing to hire our graduates at a higher wage, it's because they've done something in earning that credential that is worth more money. So when we are hearing from employers that our students aren't performing at the standards, right, to which they need to perform, it's up to us to go back in and reassess what are we teaching and how do we know that the student is learning, so that what we represent to the employer is you should hire our graduate because they're going to be better than the average person. And that credential is a representation of the skills and abilities that they're bringing to your company.
Oh, that's super cool. As an engineer, like I love that like closed loop feedback system there.
Yeah.
Like what kind of actionable feedback actually are you hearing from employers on like assessment and like kind of credentialing and like what they want to be seeing?
Sure. I don't think we're hearing anything new from employers that we haven't heard for years. I think we're just tuning into it in a way to say, well, maybe we should fix that. So employers are still telling us that students are not coming to them with kind of the core skills that humans have to have. Critical thinking, critical analysis, ability to work in teams, ability to generate their own work, ability to be innovative and creative and communicate. And so what we're doing at Vista is, as we're building out kind of a suite of programs around emerging technologies, is we are embedding the humanities very deeply in that technology program, so that our students are learning both the skills, right? How to code, how to build a game, how to develop a simulation, but they're also approaching that from a place of, what does this mean? If we're building a simulation for a war fighter, right? Because we do a lot of simulation, we have a big military complex in San Antonio. So building war simulations, helping war fighters be ready. How do we embed what we know about being a human into that technology component so that we are doing less harm, or that we are building that from an ethical and a humanity approach, so that when we blend those together, I think we get to the place that employers want us to be. They want students to have some basic skills. They're going to teach them a lot of things on the job. They want to have some basic work, technology skills or technical skills, but they're really counting on us to make sure that those students have the core skills in all of the things that we would traditionally consider transfer. So what we talk about at Vista is career readiness. Every student needs to be career ready. It's not transfer or workforce. Those are things we've made up in higher ed. They don't make any sense to anybody outside of higher ed. And so if we can get rid of those words and really just talk about making sure that students are career ready, I think the employers will be much more satisfied with the graduates, and then place a premium on hiring graduates that have earned the credential.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to hear more a little about kind of the Emerging Technologies Initiative, like kind of like when did this start? Like, kind of what was the motivation for this? Like, would just love to hear the story behind that.
Sure. So it's really emerging. So there's not a ton of detail yet. It is literally emerging. So this is a kind of one of those places where lots of trains are on different tracks and they all come into the station around the same time. So I had arrived at Northwest Vista in July of 2023. It's when I started here. And I had very quickly commissioned Burning Glass Institute to help us with some labor market research that was very segmented to the northwest part of San Antonio. All of the labor market research I found was, the San Antonio New Braunfels MSA or out of our economic development firm. And it was wonderful research. I just couldn't segment it to our local employers and our local workforce and growth needs. So we commissioned that research. It was really interesting. I'll tell you how that connects. Dr. Flores, who you mentioned a moment ago, who was on your podcast, he asked the presidents of the five colleges in the Alamo district to begin thinking about how we might develop schools as ways of capturing synergy across all of our colleges, but also to make things more clear for students and employers. So you could get a technology-based degree at every one of the Alamo colleges. How do we make that more clear and easy to navigate for students and employers? And then we had a mandate from our board to double our workforce programs in 5 years. So all of those trains are on the tracks, and Vista is like a super transfer heavy. 80% of our students are transfer. We have very, very few workforce programs.
Like they transfer in, or they transfer to like UTSA and other schools.
UTSA to Texas A&M, right? So they're transferring mostly in town. Some of them will go out of town, but most of them are in town trains. So all of those trains are on tracks, and they're all kind of coming into the station at about the same time. And when our team was looking across all of that, what we knew was we already had a baccalaureate degree in cloud computing that was launching at that time. It launched in fall of 23. We have a really deep technology infrastructure here at Vista. We do game design, simulation, modeling, coding, programming, cloud architecture, all of that. So we have a sweet spot, a cluster there. And what we saw in the workforce data out of Burning Glass Institute was that was also resonant with our local employer base. We have a lot of data centers, a lot of cyber institutions, a lot of those companies in professional services, in banking, accounting, insurance that have a big technology base that is constantly emerging. And so we have to kind of keep feeding that beast. Even though we're not teaching banking, we need to be able to teach the architecture of the technology that underpins banking. And so all of that came together, and I went to Dr. Flores and said, I know we're looking at these schools kind of as ways of providing better access for our students and our employers. And I put together a Venn diagram because I love them. I think in Venn diagrams, and it was kind of a collection of programs really centered on AI and how we would not teach AI as a discipline, but that we would have AI embedded in what we taught. And it was programs in information management and security, modeling, simulation and design, and data science and analysis. Kind of all then went into this pot, and it's been cooking. And so what I'll be presenting to our board of trustees on Saturday, a part of their budget retreat, is the official launch of a School of Emerging Technologies. It'll launch in fall of 25. And what launching means to us is starting the program development process, and then starting to frame out what does it mean to be a school. And then very specifically at Vista, our little tagline for the School of Emerging Technologies is where humanity meets technology. And so we've got a steering committee that is co-chaired by a cloud computing professor and a public ceramicist. She does public ceramics. It's amazing. Her work is amazing, right? But it's got to be this intersection of arts and humanities and ethics and philosophy, integrated anthropology, all of that integrated into the ways that we're going to develop people who can make great technology that actually advances humanity and that is aware of and builds toward the positive components of how we might better use technology to support our community and our country. And so that's where we're headed. We don't know what all of it means. It's really fun and a little terrifying. And we like the name of emerging technologies because I think it's going to keep us right on the edge. Right? It's going to push us to be incredibly responsive to our industry partners, responsive to economic development, and will force us to evolve our program and develop our program development process to be truly responsive and emerging.
Oh, that's super cool. I love that you guys like bring the humanities in there too. Because like when I was at Stanford, like doing engineering school, like a lot of my classmates were like, oh, like and making engineers take philosophy classes and like ethics classes. Like this is so dumb. And then, I look at the world around me now and I'm like, oh my God, like people are like, shipping these products that are like very harmful for society. Like I think about like the first person that like open sourced like text to speech models. And now like you have all of these people using that technology to build deepfakes and deceive people and like create robocall scams. Right. I'm like, this person clearly didn't really think before before they decided what to do with their research. And I'm like, this is so important.
It's spot on. The other place that I think it's really helpful and important. So I'm 51 years old, and so I'm getting old, and I'm thinking about like what does all of this mean anyway? And I think a lot about the person that's going to be in my job in 30 years because Vista's 30 years old and I know our first president. So she's one of my dear friends and she's 81 now, right? And so she started when she was 50. It's just this lovely little cycle of the world, right? And so I know that she made decisions 30 years ago that have made me more successful and made Vista more successful. So what are we doing right now that will make Vista successful 30 years from now? And then we extrapolate that to our community, right? We have this moonshot in the Alamo Colleges district of ending intergenerational poverty through partnership in education and training. And so like big, lofty goals. And I don't think it's responsible as a person who's a decision maker to leave the humanities behind and to leave the arts behind, because right now they're out of favor, or they're not producing wages that will sustain families, which is critical. I don't take anything away from that. But I think it's our job to figure out, how do we build that in to programs that do, how do we make that a value add to a Vista graduate? So yeah, you can code and build games and make simulations, but you can also know how to work with your the motion capture artist that's wearing your motion capture suit because they were a dancer at Vista, and they practice their craft by wearing the motion capture suit for your video game. Or they're a sound engineer and they're helping you build your soundtrack to be a very realistic reflection of what's happening in your simulation. So there's this very altruistic piece of this. Like, I just don't think it's in our best interest as humans to leave behind our humanity. That's what's kept us moving for millennia. And so we happen to be in a time where people aren't paying the kinds of money for those sorts of things. We did this before. We did this with trades, right? And we left them behind. And now electricians are making as much as starting architects, because we realize actually those are things that we need, and those are of value to our community and our society. I think we're in a similar place with arts and humanities. So there's that altruistic part of it. It's also a place where I know we can do better, and our students need us to do better. Graduating a student with a fine arts degree doesn't set them up for career success. Graduating a student with a fine arts focus in a simulation or in data visualization or in graphic design takes what their passion is and what they're really good at, lets them develop that, but also puts that to work in a way that a company will pay a higher wage for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, okay, I kind of want to get your take on this. So I feel like on the space of the internet that I hang out in, like, I feel like nobody hates AI more than professional writers and professional artists. And like, do you experience like that kind of in your campus? Like when you're trying to like bring, AI into the arts, do you ever see pushback from faculty being like, no, like I hate AI, like AI is like theft, like, copyright infringement, like all of this stuff. Like, how do you kind of convince people that like, oh, like, we need to bring AI into the humanities and the arts, when like a lot of people just like see AI as creatives and like kind of get the ick,
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I think it's across everything we do, not just in the arts, right? It's in everything. I have a friend that has a PhD in math, and when AI really first started becoming popular, she took her research question and popped it into AI and had a solution in 30 seconds. And it was her entire dissertation.
There's real fear. Yeah. I think people are super worried that like AI is going to make them irrelevant.
And like, okay, so then what did that replace? It gave you an answer, but you don't have the thought process and the rigorous consideration and the analysis skills if you just go straight to the answer.
For now.
So we're thinking about it in all of our disciplines. So I would say there's kind of maybe 2 or 3 major attitudes about it.
Yeah.
One is like super excited. How do we use this? And I am really intrigued by those faculty, because I just keep saying like, okay, you can avoid it if you want to, but your students have access to it now, and they're going to have access to it at work. So how do we help them learn how to use it well? Well, you have to learn that first yourself, right? So the early adopters are super excited, really into it. We have a whole group of faculty who feel like they're cheating if they use AI. And so they don't want their students to use it because it's a crutch or it's a substitute. And then we've got the real naysayers of like, absolutely not. There are also people who don't want calculators in their classroom and don't use your phone, right? So like, we really run the gamut. The way that I have found to be most successful is for me to not be the one having the conversation. The faculty need to talk to each other about this. This is the place where they have peer learning. They're able to really push and pull and consider multiple perspectives and learn from one another. And it doesn't feel like, a mandate coming down. I think it's so funny when people talk about administration, like, that's me, Amy. Like, it's just me. I'm a human. I'm not a robot over here clicking things out, trying to make your life difficult. I'm also interested in these conversations with you, but I recognize my title and position carries with it a different connotation. So what I've been trying to do is really resource the faculty and give them the space and the encouragement to have the conversations that they are interested in having in the ways that they want to have it. They're far more influential with one another than they are responsive to an administrative mandate. But it does take, it takes thoughtful engagement, I think, right? So putting this public ceramicist, her name is Diana, her artwork is amazing and beautiful. And when I started talking about this in front of the college, she came up and she said, I totally do not understand what you're talking about. I don't get it. I don't like it. And she came back and I said, I understand. Let's keep talking about it. She came back the next day and she said, okay, so I went to AI. And I wrote a mission statement for the School of Emerging Technologies that used some of the words that you used, and it's pretty good. And now I'm really into it. So it's, it's inviting people into the conversation to say, I don't know. I have no idea. I remember when I was first working and I thought the president of the college knew all the answers. Like they were just up here, doling out the information as they saw fit. We don't know any more than anybody else does about AI. We're learning it right along with you. So I don't have anything to say about it other than let's talk about it and let's figure out how it fits in. But let's also recognize the reality that everyone has access to it right now. And on the topic of academic integrity in terms of access, I have a friend that says that what AI has done is really just democratize what has been available to people with means for many years. So people with means have paid people to write their papers and paid people to do their tests and paid people, right? So people without means have not had that opportunity. And it's democratizing this idea that everyone has access to the information now. Okay, then what do we do? What do we do in that scenario? And how do we help our students and our faculty really understand how to leverage this to make things better? And then, how do you get back to this question of how do you know what someone knows? AI actually has some pretty cool ways of helping you figure that out.
Sounds a lot like that new startup that everyone hates, Cluely. It's like, oh, before only the rich kids could cheat. Now everyone can cheat.
It's exactly what I'm saying, man. Like it's exactly that, right? Only the rich people, only people with means could pay their friend to take their test. Now everybody has access to it. Okay. So it's nothing new. People have been doing this for, forever. People have been finding ways around the system. It's like, how do we turn that around to make it something more positive and really useful for students in their learning?
Yeah, on that topic, I kind of want to go back to something that you said a few minutes ago, which is you noticed that there's kind of a big contingent of faculty that see using AI themselves, like as faculty, like cheating. Like, why do you think that is? And what in their mind kind of associates AI with cheating to them?
I'll just tell you my own experience.
Sure.
Because I felt that way the first time I used AI because it was so easy. I could not believe, I was so frustrated because we were trying to come up with an executive summary of our strategic plan. And we just kept missing the mark and it was taking forever. And I was frustrated about it. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try it. I've not done it. I'm just going to see what happens. And in less than 3 minutes, I had an executive summary, a 1-paragraph summary, a statement. The project was done. It was over. I made the tweaks that I wanted to have, and I was on to the next thing. That felt like cheating to me, right?
But did you feel guilty? Did you feel this should have taken more work? This should have taken more mental labor,
right?
Yeah.
This productive struggle, except for it wasn't productive. It wasn't productive struggle. It was wordsmithing. And so it gave me this time back that I was able then to devote to other things. So that for me has been my own experience using AI as like the easy button. Remember that commercial that used to be like the Staples easy button and you would just push the easy button? That was easy. That's exactly how I felt. And then I was like, oh, is that wrong? And actually It's really good. And actually I can use it. So then I made this big point of disclosing to everyone. I used AI to write this. I didn't want to be accused of, I think she's using AI. Oh, no, I am. Let's be clear. Let me tell you up front, right? So I can just say from my own experience as an academician, I had that feeling at first. What I think that it's, as I processed it, what I'm realizing is that it's actually giving me more time back to do the things that only I can do, that are innately human: creativity, innovation, thinking of the questions to even ask, all of that, except that's human. I'm the only one that can do that. AI can generate models for me, or, give me that in this, in this format, or, give me an analysis of, I recently ran an enrollment projection report, and, like, based on our daily rate of enrollment right now, in the first 15 days of enrollment, in order to reach this number of students, how many students do we need to add every day? Okay, well, like 3 seconds later, this number, and it showed me the math. Then I said, okay, what if we had an influx of 6,000 students because we register our dual enrollment students all at once? What does that do to the number? And then I was like, ooh, you know what I forgot was drop for non-payment and re-registration. So if we drop 20% and we only get 10% back, and we do that twice, what does that do to the model? I did that in 15 minutes rather than 2 days. Right.
Incredible.
Then I was able to take that and actually apply that. So, I think that that's where faculty are, is like, it feels like an easy button. We've been taught to struggle. We've been taught that learning is all about, this mental gymnastics and hard and pushing. And so I think anything that feels that easy has to be bad. And I'm just telling you, man, I'm finding so many uses for it, but I still do my own work. Right? It becomes components of a broader analysis, or a broader strategy, or a broader paper, something like that.
Yeah, and I love that you talked about disclosure, because I feel like that's a big component of this. It's like when it's out in the open, then like that kind of like helps with the culture. Like I think we talked to a lot of schools, and like a lot of these schools have like kind of like shame culture around using AI. They're like, oh, nobody's talking about it, and so I feel dishonest and shameful when I do. But it's like the schools that talk about it a lot and kind of are like, mixing with each other and being like, I use AI for this, I use AI for that. Then like it becomes more neutral and less like kind of intrinsically shameful to be using AI. And so I think, yeah, like everyone talking to each other and disclosing and just being honest with each other seems to be going a long way.
Right. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I try to model the way on that, right? So always being very clear and upfront, like, okay, I did this with AI, let's look at it together. But also, y'all, you can use this tool. It's a tool available to you. It doesn't replace your brain. You're going to still, like, I knew when I asked AI to model out the enrollment projections, as soon as I saw the first one, I'm like, that's wrong, because I didn't factor in this component. Oh, that's wrong, because I didn't factor it. Well, AI never would have known that, right? Now it might in the future. The more times I run my analysis, it might start building a little database on it, but there's still this human loop. And I really like, I'm a big Brene Brown fan, and she did a series on living beyond human scale. It was a podcast series. If you haven't listened to it, I would highly recommend it. I think it's absolutely fascinating. But one of the things that kind of came through, she talked to several people on several different fronts of artificial intelligence. And one of them was an educator on academic integrity and that sort of thing. And everybody kept talking about the human in the loop, and that, this isn't AI running wild. This is, if we do this right and we're really thoughtful about it, there's a lot of the genie we can't put back in the bottle. Like you were saying, Bradley, like there are things that have happened by now where people are using it for evil and we can't get the genie back in the bottle. But how do we then create for most people who are not evil, the discipline to put a human in the loop on AI, and to get that human perspective, to check it for not only facts, but for impact and for tone and for further insights. All of those sort of things are that human in the loop component. And so we've been talking a lot about that on campus too, right? That this isn't a replacement. It changes what happens in the classroom. You used to have to come to a college class because that was where the information was. There was a person called a professor, and they had the information in their head and they professed it, right? Like that was the game. That was what we offered people, was we were the container of the knowledge. And if you wanted the knowledge, that meant coming here for that. That has changed completely. This is again, democratization of information. There is no one container for the knowledge. The knowledge is out there. So then what we do in the classroom has to change, because it's really bringing in the humanity part of it. It's bringing in the critical thought, the analysis, the questioning, the values orientation to that information. How do you know if what you're reading is real? How do you know what that makes you feel? Did that change your perspective? Right. So that's really what I see happening in classrooms. But it's changing what our faculty, it's a big change for what they're bringing to the table, what value they're adding. If it's not being the container of the information anymore, it's a facilitator of learning.
Right. And they need to feel seen. Like they need to be like, okay, like this, I still have value, even though information is readily available and I don't hold the keys to it anymore. Right.
Right. And it's almost, at this point, it's just too much. There's no way to deal with all of the information. So it's almost like you go back to this, how do you develop critical frameworks of thinking about information? And how do you develop a framework of values that you can assess information against to determine whether you want to believe that or incorporate that into your knowledge base, or you want to leave that aside because it's not aligned, right? It's just that great pullback into this interdisciplinary thinking, into this frameworks of analysis that is really where education started, right? It was, Plato and, this kind of, I can't say it, Aristotle, I was going to say Aristotelian, I think that might be it. How they taught their classes, right? It was this deep, reflective conversation. It wasn't about what do you know and what do you know and what do you know. It was about how do you think about that and what does that mean? And I feel like we're just slowly sinking back into that as a role of education is, okay, everything's out there. What do you do with it? How do you use it to make humanity better?
On the ancient Greeks too, I know oral exams are making like a big comeback right now.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, I was gonna ask something else. What was I gonna say? I lost my train of thought when you talked about the ancient Greeks. I love that.
Well, that Socratic method, right? Like that is
it's kind of a very pure way to assess learning.
It's a really interesting thing to go to a classroom today where a teacher is teaching in that method, and to know that is as valuable today, maybe more so than it was when the only place you could get the technical information was to go into the classroom and have somebody show you how to make the switches move. Now it's like, okay, well, I can watch a YouTube video. Though every time we have anything in our house that's broken and my husband gets a YouTube video out, I call the professional immediately. Like, we are not going to do home repairs based on YouTube videos. That is a bad strategy. Not doing it. But we see awesome. Now, right? You go into these classrooms and people are really just talking about what these things mean. It's all out there. I think it's changing the dynamic, but I think it also really then changes how do we assess what they know.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, I remember my last question. Okay. So I don't know how involved you are with like kind of like the academic integrity, like kind of like violation cases and things like that. But I'm kind of curious like what your like kind of approach would be. Like, if a student kind of has, AI related misconduct, they use AI to like write the paper for them or something like that. Like, yeah, at the same time, you guys are kind of pushing like, hey, like, we need to be using AI for everything. Like, this is a really powerful tool and like, it's going to be crucial to your future success. So like, how do you convince them like that they shouldn't be using AI, like in that kind of like teaching and learning moment? Like, how do you teach them like, okay, like this is a great thing and you need to be using it, but just not in this particular context?
I'm not sure I'm there. I'm not sure it's a no. I think it's like, how do we help our faculty learn how to integrate that? And then,
so you're like, what was the problem with the assessment in the first place?
Well, how would you build an assignment to utilize AI so that you're actually teaching a student to use the tool that is free and available and they're going to use? So we can keep our heads in the sand all we want about it. It doesn't change anything about people using AI, especially our students. And we're sending them into a world of work where they're going to use AI. And so if we just keep ignoring it or acting like it's a bad thing or we're not going to use it, I don't think we're doing a service to our students in any way. So I think it starts at the assignment level, but I also think, this is where I think assessment practices have to change. We started talking about assessment,
for sure.
Right? To me, it's all the way back to assessment. So, if I want to know if somebody really understands something, we talk about it together. You have your notes if you want, but my only assessment of your learning isn't going to be reading a paper. It's going to be a conversation with you. If I want to know if you understand the math problem, we're going to sit together and you're going to talk me through how you would solve the math problem and why. It changes the whole dynamic of assessment. I think it's a really interesting challenge because authentic assessment, which we've been talking about for years in higher education, and we've been dabbling around the edges, we have to get right in the middle of it now. Because if you really want to know what somebody learned, then you have to be in community with them and in dialogue with them. And a lot of those assessment techniques are labor intensive. They're hard to do. You cannot run, a phone over with your Scantron reader over somebody's bubbled in test sheet and give them a grade. I would also argue that hasn't been a great assessment strategy for many years, but it persists because we have a labor model in higher education that we don't have enough faculty to teach all of the classes we need, right? And I mean, so there's a business component to this, but I think where I would like to see us go is faculty having more time to do that deeper level of assessment so that they can sit with us. I mean, I remember when I used to take Spanish, right? And we would do oral exams and I would sit with my teacher and have to speak Spanish to her and get it very, very wrong, right? But she wasn't listening to me doing a recording. She wasn't,
pretty hard to cheat on that.
Yeah, right. So I think there's something to that, right? And I think it's also something that we're wrestling with about what does it mean to learn online? What does it mean to learn in person? How do you mitigate all of those barriers? Online education, where it's like plug and play, and I flip the class over and all the dates roll and respond to two classmates in your discussion post. I think that's the equivalent of a Scantron. And where I see us needing to evolve is really in authentic assessment techniques where faculty actually have the time to sit with a student, one or two or a group, however they want to do it, right? But that there is this engagement where I can talk to you about this and I can push on things just like you're doing with me right now. Like, well, you said this, what did that mean? Right. And so you will have a different sense of what I know about these topics because we've had this conversation than if you read an email that I sent you. And so it's back to this deep humanity and community that I think is this underlying component of what we do in higher education. And I feel like we just keep pulling back the layers of the onion to expose more and more that learning for humans is social, and and knowing what someone knows has a social component to that. And we might need to rethink our labor models, or we might need to rethink our class size models or our teaching models to get to a place where faculty can genuinely sign off and say, it doesn't matter how many times you were here or absent. It doesn't matter, whether or not you participated in class or you brought canned food in for the food drive. What matters is these learning outcomes that we said you were going to learn here. And what matters is my professional assessment about whether or not you know those. And how we get from one to the other is, I think, our biggest question right now that we have to figure out in the classroom. I think our biggest question we have to figure out as higher ed is then how do we help employers or people who essentially assign value to the credential that we produce? How do we help them have confidence to know that our assessment was right? And this student, when you hire this student, they're worth paying more for because they can do the things that we've said that you want them to be able to do.
Oh, totally. Yeah, we were just talking to Jason Gulia a few weeks ago, and I think his take is assessment was kind of always kind of broken. There were all these cracks in the pipes and stuff like that, and AI was just the thing that bust the pipe open, and now we really have to rethink things.
That's right. I agree.
Listen, we're coming up on time. Sorry. We can go all day. But just amazing insights, Amy, and fantastic questions, Bradley. Great conversation. Last question, Amy. And you talked a little bit about this just now. What do you see as the future of academic integrity?
Yeah. I think it's always been a challenge when you have humans evaluating other humans and people wanting to get a good grade and all of those factors. It drives people to do things that we would say don't meet our standards, right? So
It's
I think that's
genuinely
always been a
mistakes.
problem.
Yeah.
There's nothing new. I think the ubiquity of it and the democratization of it is new. It's a new challenge for us because more people have access. And I think we fooled ourselves into thinking that we were controlling it when we really weren't. But what I think we have to be able to do is a couple of things. One is to help students understand and value that when they learn, when they really learn how to do it, that there's a lifetime impact of that. When they actually have constructed the knowledge for themselves, that there's value in that beyond just getting a grade. So I think there's a little bit of a reputational problem and a value proposition problem for higher ed that we have to do that both for employers and for students who are entrusting us with their time and their money to help them get credentials. But then I think that the big work for us for the future is in really redefining what it is that we do in higher education and how that adds value, and how do we know when somebody has learned something? What are the methods by which we can assess that with confidence and then be able to share that with our community, with employers in a way that they can also authenticate and validate. And so to me, it feels like right back to the beginning. It doesn't feel like anything new at all. It feels like, yeah, we really got to get our arms around this. And like you said, Bradley, like the pipeline's broken open. It's not trickling out anymore. It's wide open. And so, what are we going to do about it? And how do we stay relevant? And how do we ensure that what it is that we do continues to add value to our society, to our communities, and to our students?
Absolutely. Well said, Amy. Well said. So we're at end of time. I just want to say thank you so much for being here with us. And
Thank you.
I want to outro my co-host, who everyone should know by now is the most. He is Bradley Emmy, CTO, co-founder at Pangram Labs. Bradley, thank you as always.
Oh, thanks for having me, Alvin. And thank you, Amy, for coming on. That was a lot of fun.
My pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. So she is your guest, ladies and gentlemen. She is Amy Bosley, and she is the president at Northwest Vista College, aka Vista. Amy, thanks again for being here with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for the conversation. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You've just ed upped.
Thank you for listening. This episode is part of our Academic Integrity series sponsored by Pangram Labs, the world's leading AI detection technology. Try it out at pangram.com. That's PANGRAM.com.